Sarah stood in the crowded living room on Christmas morning, her heart pounding as her entire family burst into cruel laughter. Her mother, father, brothers, and sisters all stared at her like she was some kind of joke. "Look at her," someone sneered from the corner. "She's still here. Still single. Still alone." The words hit her like stones, each one sharper than the last. She forced herself to stand tall, biting back the tears burning behind her eyes. In her family, crying was weakness, and weakness was something they enjoyed watching. Christmas was supposed to be a day of joy and love, but to Sarah it had become a yearly punishment. "Smile, Sarah," her sister Anna mocked. "At least pretend you're happy." She lifted her chin and forced a small smile, though her hands trembled. "I'm fine," she whispered, but no one believed her. Her father leaned back in his chair with a sigh. "A woman your age should be married already," he said. "You're almost 30. What exactly are you waiting for?" Sarah swallowed hard, wishing she could disappear from the room. She wasn't always the woman standing alone in that living room. Before the mockery, there had been hope. Before the humiliation, she believed her life could still turn out beautiful. Sarah was the first daughter of a man with 3 wives, and the house had always been crowded with children and competition. Her mother, Linda, was strong but harsh, her pride tied tightly to her daughters' marriages. "Your sisters didn't waste time," Linda often said. "Why are you different?" Sarah never had an answer. She only knew she wanted real love, not a rushed mistake. The morning of that terrible Christmas, her mother called from the kitchen. "Sarah, come here." The tone alone made Sarah's stomach twist. When she stepped inside, warmth from the stove filled the room, but nothing about her mother's expression felt warm. "You know what I've been thinking?" Linda asked sweetly. "Maybe this Christmas, you should ask Santa for a husband. Because clearly, no real man wants you." She said it with a smile, but the words cut sharper than a knife. Sarah forced a laugh. "Maybe I will, Mama." But inside, she felt herself shrinking. That was how her family treated her, as if marriage was the only measure of worth. Her youngest sister, Grace, married at 23 and had 2 children by 27. Another sister, Bella, was engaged again after a messy divorce. Even her half-sisters had husbands and babies, and they flaunted it proudly. Sarah walked through the house that morning, trying to avoid anyone, but the house was too full. At breakfast, Bella patted her arm. "Don't worry, Sarah. Maybe God is still working on your own man." But the smirk on her face showed she didn't believe it. Later that afternoon, her youngest brother, Daniel, stopped her in the hallway with that same fake concern he always wore. "Sarah, people are talking," he whispered dramatically. "A woman your age with no husband? It looks suspicious." She stared at him in disbelief. "Suspicious how?" she asked quietly. Daniel shrugged. "Some people think something must be wrong with you. Why else would a man not pick you?" The cruelty stung, but Sarah simply walked away, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her hurt. There was only one person in the world Sarah could truly talk to, her best friend Joy. Joy was beautiful, educated, and just as tired of the pressure to get married. They'd met in university 7 years earlier, and from the first week, they became inseparable. "Families like ours don't care about love," Joy often said. "They just want you to marry anyone so they can boast." Sarah would nod in agreement. "I'd rather be alone forever than marry the wrong man," she always answered. And she meant it, until loneliness began to creep in. 8 months before that painful Christmas, Sarah made a decision. She told her mother she was leaving home to stay with a cousin in the city. "Leaving?" Linda repeated, her voice sharp. "To do what?" "Run away from responsibility." Sarah kept her voice steady. "I need space. I need to do something with my life." Her mother scoffed, waving her spoon. "You think getting a skill will give you a husband?" Sarah didn't respond. She simply packed her bag, determined to build a life that wasn't controlled by judgment. In the city, Sarah found something that brought her joy: cooking. She joined a small culinary school and threw herself into it completely. She practiced for hours, burning dishes, remaking them, learning the right techniques. 3 months later, she graduated top of her class. A respected restaurant hired her, and for the first time, Sarah felt capable. "Your food is different," her manager said. "It has emotion in it." That restaurant became her escape. It was the one place where no one mocked her, where she mattered, where she wasn't judged by marriage. Even with her new life, loneliness found her at night. After long shifts, she would return to her quiet apartment and sit on her bed, wondering why her heart felt so heavy. Couples walked past her on the street, holding hands, laughing softly, and she felt something ache inside her. Joy would call and they would talk for hours, sharing jokes and dreams. But one rainy night, everything changed. Sarah stepped outside the restaurant and heard angry shouting. When she turned the corner, she froze, for men were attacking a well-dressed stranger in the mud. The stranger tried to shield himself, but he was outnumbered and already bleeding from his lip. "Leave him alone," Sarah shouted without thinking. Her voice cut through the rain like thunder. The men turned and stared at her in disbelief. One laughed. "Madam, mind your business." But Sarah stepped forward anyway, raising her umbrella like a shield. "I said leave him." Something in her eyes, fearless, determined, made them back away. And in that brief moment, the stranger stumbled to his feet, gripping her arm for support. "Come with me," Sarah said quickly. She pulled him toward a side street, both of them slipping on the wet pavement as they ran. The men shouted after them, but the rain grew heavier, and soon the voices faded. Under the small shelter of an old building, the stranger leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "Thank you," he whispered, staring at her like she was unreal. "I don't know why you helped me." Sarah shrugged, her chest still heaving. "No one else would. And you needed it." Up close, she could see his torn suit, his expensive watch covered in mud. Whoever he wasn't an ordinary man. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. He shook his head, though his jaw trembled. "Just shaken," he said. "What's your name?" Sarah hesitated. "It doesn't matter. Just get home safely." He tried to insist on paying her back somehow, but she handed him her umbrella and stepped into the rain. "Take it," she said. "You need it more than I do." And before he could argue, she disappeared down the street. She didn't know he stood there watching her walk away, rain falling on his face, his heart pounding with something he couldn't name. For days after, Sarah tried to forget the incident, but she couldn't stop thinking about his eyes, grateful, gentle, confused. She pushed the memory aside, burying herself in work. But fate had other plans. A week later, as she finished her shift, she saw a familiar figure standing outside the restaurant door. Her breath caught. It was him, the stranger from the rain. He smiled when he saw her, stepping forward as if he'd been waiting all day. "I've been looking for you," he said. Sarah blinked, stunned. "For me? Why?" He held up the small, broken umbrella she'd given him. "Because you saved me," he said simply. "And you didn't even tell me your name." Sarah laughed nervously. "You don't owe me anything." But he shook his head. "That's not why I'm here." He paused, studying her. "I just wanted to see you again." Sarah introduced herself, and he told her his name was Michael, a simple name for a man with such expensive clothes and quiet authority. They talked for a few minutes, awkward but warm. As they spoke, she noticed the way he listened, the way he really looked at her. Before leaving, he said, "I hope this isn't the last time I see you." And then he walked away, leaving Sarah standing there wondering why her heart felt so unsteady. Over the next few weeks, Michael kept appearing at the restaurant. Sometimes he would sit quietly in a corner watching the kitchen. Sometimes he would talk to the manager. Sometimes he would ask Sarah questions about her cooking, her life, her dreams. She didn't know what to make of it. "This man likes you," Joy teased. "It's obvious." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Men like him don't like women like me." But Joy smirked. "Then explain why he's always around." One afternoon, the restaurant manager called for a staff meeting. Sarah stood in the back, curious. Then the manager announced, "Everyone, the restaurant has a new owner." A hush fell over the room. Then Michael walked into the kitchen. The staff froze. Sarah felt the ground tilt beneath her. Michael looked around warmly, then his eyes found hers. "Hello, Sarah," he said gently. She could barely breathe. He wasn't just wealthy, he owned the place she worked. She felt embarrassed, confused, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked later, when he found her alone. Michael smiled softly. "I wanted you to know me before you knew my money." She folded her arms. That's not fair. Maybe, he admitted. But I didn't want you to change the way you treated me. He stepped closer. Sarah, I've been thinking about you since that night in the rain. You don't know how rare your kindness is. I wanted to understand you. Their conversations grew deeper, filled with teasing and long pauses that carried unspoken meaning. One evening, Michael said, I want to take you somewhere. Just for a walk. Sarah hesitated, but something in his voice felt sincere. They walked by the riverside, talking about dreams, childhood struggles, and the pressure to please their families. You deserve a life where you're respected, Michael said quietly. Not mocked. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Respect is rare in my world, she whispered. Maybe it's time you found a new world, Michael replied gently. Christmas approached quickly, and with it came the familiar pressure from Sarah's mother. You must come home, Linda insisted over the phone. Everyone will be here. And this time, Sarah, you better have something to show for yourself. Sarah stared at her wall in silence. Mama, please don't start. But Linda sighed dramatically. Do you want the whole family to keep laughing at you? You're almost 30. What is this nonsense? When the call ended, Sarah sat on her bed trembling, torn between fear and duty. Michael noticed her distant mood at work the next day. You're quiet today, he said softly. She forced a smile. Family pressure. He nodded slowly. Your mother again. Sarah sighed. She wants me home for Christmas, with a man. Michael's eyes softened. And do you want to go? She shook her head. No. But she will never forgive me if I stay away. He studied her for a moment, then said, You shouldn't suffer alone, Sarah. Not anymore. Something in his tone made her heart flutter painfully. The night before Christmas Eve, Sarah sat in her apartment with Joy. I don't want to go, she whispered. But I also don't want trouble with my mother. Joy squeezed her hand. You're strong. You'll survive it. Sarah gave a small laugh. Surviving shouldn't be the goal. Joy tilted her head. Well, maybe you won't be alone this time. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Joy smirked. Michael cares, Sarah. More than you think. But Sarah couldn't allow herself to believe it, not yet. She went home the next morning, and instantly regretted it. The moment she stepped inside, her mother frowned. You're alone again, Linda said flatly. Sarah, when will you change? Her father barely glanced up from his chair. We've talked about this, he muttered. A woman must build a family. Her siblings whispered among themselves, already preparing their insults. Sarah went to her old room, sat on the bed, and pressed her hands over her face. God, give me strength, she whispered to herself. By the second day of Christmas, the cruelty began. During lunch, her sister Anna announced her pregnancy and everyone praised her like a queen. Then she looked directly at Sarah. Maybe next year you'll show us your imaginary boyfriend, Anna joked loudly. At least we'll have something to laugh about. The room erupted in laughter. Sarah sat quietly, fighting tears. Her mother leaned toward her. Take the joke, Sarah. Your time will come, maybe. Her heart shattered again, the same way it had every year. That night, Sarah escaped to her room, crying quietly into her pillow so no one would hear. A soft knock came at the door. She ignored it, assuming it was her mother. But then a familiar voice whispered, Sarah, it's me. Her heart stopped. She opened the door slowly, and Michael stood there in the hallway of her family home. Clean suit, calm eyes, warmth in his smile. What are you doing here? She whispered. Michael stepped closer. I came for you. Word spread quickly through the house, and within seconds her entire family rushed into the living room. Anna gasped loudly. Sarah brought a man. Daniel smirked. Let's see him. But their expressions changed when they saw Michael, confident, handsome, clearly wealthy. Her mother's eyes widened. Welcome. Welcome. Please come in, she said, suddenly full of excitement. Her father shook Michael's hand eagerly. Young man, what brings you here? Michael looked at Sarah gently. I came to check on a friend. Her siblings watched with jealous curiosity. A friend. Anna repeated, forcing a laugh. That's cute, Sarah. But Michael didn't react to her tone. Sarah deserves kindness, he said calmly. I wanted to spend time with her, if that's all right. Her mother's face lit up. Please. Please. Stay. We'll prepare food. But Sarah could feel their judgment, their hunger for gossip. Michael leaned closer. Let's get some air, he whispered. She nodded gratefully, and together they stepped outside under the evening sky. They walked until they reached the quiet road near the compound. The night breeze cooled Sarah's burning cheeks. Thank you for coming, she whispered. Michael looked at her softly. You looked like you needed someone. She swallowed. My family, they don't understand me. They don't deserve to judge you, he said firmly. You're strong, Sarah. Stronger than they'll ever understand. She looked away, tears forming again. It's hard being the disappointment of the family. Michael reached for her hand. Not to me. The next morning, the compound was buzzing with excitement. Everyone acted overly friendly toward Sarah, suddenly helpful and kind. Sarah, do you want tea? Sarah, come sit here. They were pretending, because of Michael. At breakfast, her father said loudly, Young man, you must come again. But Michael glanced at Sarah and shook his head gently. Actually, sir. I'm taking Sarah with me today. The entire table froze. Taking her where? Anna demanded. Michael looked at Sarah, then said, Somewhere she'll finally be treated with respect. Sarah's family stared in shock as Michael stood from the table and gently reached for her hand. Pack your things, he said softly. You're coming with me. Her mother rushed forward. Wait. She can't just leave, but Michael cut her off politely. Ma'am, Sarah has suffered here long enough. Her father cleared his throat. Young man, we didn't. Michael held his gaze. Sir, you mocked her for years. I watched it yesterday. I will not leave her in pain. Sarah stood slowly, her heart racing. I'll go, she whispered. 30 minutes later, Sarah stepped out with her small suitcase. The entire compound stood outside, pretending to smile. Sarah, we were only joking, Anna said quickly. Don't be angry. Daniel added, You know we love you. But Sarah simply shook her head. You loved mocking me, she said quietly. Now you can live without me. Michael opened the car door for her. As she got in, her mother shouted, You'll regret leaving this family. Sarah looked back one last time. I already regret staying this long, she answered. They drove for hours until the city lights replaced the dusty roads. Sarah leaned back in her seat, exhausted and overwhelmed. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Michael exhaled. You don't need to thank me for showing you kindness. She turned to him. Why did you come? He hesitated, then said quietly, Because I care about you. More than I expected. Sarah's heart fluttered painfully. For years, she'd been invisible. Now someone finally saw her. I don't deserve you, she murmured. Michael shook his head. You deserve more than you imagine. Over the next weeks, their connection deepened. Sarah returned to her job with renewed confidence, and Michael visited the restaurant almost every evening. They would talk for hours, sometimes laughing, sometimes sharing painful memories. One night, he took her for a walk by the river. Sarah, he said gently, I've been meaning to ask something. She stopped walking. What is it? Michael took a breath. Would you consider giving us a chance? You and me. Sarah's heart thudded. I don't know if I'm ready. Michael smiled softly. I'll wait. But just as her life began to feel peaceful, something unexpected disrupted it. One evening, her old friend Joy appeared at her doorstep. Sarah, she said breathlessly, I heard everything. I heard you left home. I came to check on you. Sarah hugged her tightly. I've missed you. Joy walked inside, her eyes scanning the apartment. So, Michael is part of your life now? She asked carefully. Sarah smiled shyly. Yes. He's been kind to me. Joy nodded, but something in her eyes flickered, jealousy maybe, or something darker. In the days that followed, Joy visited often, too often. She asked countless questions about Michael, about his money, about the restaurant. He must be very rich, Joy said one afternoon. Women must chase him everywhere. Sarah frowned. Joy, what are you implying? Joy smirked. Just be careful. Men like him don't stay loyal. Sarah didn't want to argue, so she changed the topic. But the uneasiness stayed. That night, Joy insisted on joining Sarah and Michael for dinner. Throughout the evening, she watched Michael closely, her smile too sweet, her tone too warm. Later that week, Michael grew unusually distant. He stopped visiting the restaurant and rarely returned her calls. Sarah felt panic rise in her chest. Did I do something wrong? She whispered to herself. The answer came abruptly when Michael showed up at her door with pain in his eyes. Sarah, he said quietly, can we talk? She stepped aside. Of course. He looked at the floor. Joy told me something. She said she saw you with another man at the restaurant. Someone you were close to. Sarah froze. That's a lie. Michael sighed heavily. Joy seemed sincere. She said you were hiding things from me. Sarah shook her head desperately. Michael, I would never do that to you. Why would Joy say such a thing? Before he could answer, a knock sounded at the door. Joy stepped inside with fake concern. Is everything okay? She asked innocently. Sarah stared at her. Why are you lying about me? Joy blinked dramatically. Me? Lying? Sarah, I'm your friend. I'm trying to save you. Michael watched them silently, torn and confused. Sarah stepped closer to Joy. I trusted you, she said, her voice trembling. Why are you doing this? Joy's mask finally cracked. Because you don't deserve all of this, she snapped. You don't deserve him. You don't deserve success. You left me behind, Sarah. Michael's eyes widened as Joy continued ranting. You think you're better now? You think you deserve love? Sarah, you were supposed to fail. Not rise above me. Sarah felt her knees weaken as the truth hit her. Joy wasn't a friend. She had been an enemy all along. Michael stepped between them, his face full of disbelief. Joy, you lied to me? She laughed bitterly. I only told you what you needed to hear. Michael shook his head slowly. No. I know who Sarah is. I know her heart. I should have trusted her. He turned to Sarah, cupping her face gently. I'm sorry for doubting you. Tears fell down her cheeks. I'm sorry too. Joy scoffed and stormed out, slamming the door. Sarah collapsed into Michael's arms, finally realizing that the only love worth keeping is the one willing to fight for truth, not lies.